Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Disrupt to Spark podcast, recorded right here in Saturn Studios in Garden City, New York. If we haven't met yet, I'm Susan Gatti. I'm your host. And on this podcast, I look for the coolest people that are doing amazing things in their industries that can share some simple and relatable tips that are guaranteed to help you increase your success at work. On today's episode, we're discussing some proven methods for how you can accelerate your own personal impact at work. And rejoining me in the studios today is a fan favorite and my favorite learning and talent development leader, Mr. Fuler O'Brien. His proven methods for accelerating impact and creating performance has built him a world-class reputation in his organization. He's trusted by business partners and stakeholders, and we are so thrilled to have you. Welcome back to the show, Christian. I had to have you back again because we blew up the internet with our view on how to create amazing training. I don't know what people liked more, train to the do.
Hashtag.
Yep. Confidence as a measurement.
Don't say it can't be done. There's always a way.
Right?
I mean, so many nuggets, so many pearls. And can we just reflect on the space that we're in right now? Because since our first conversation, you see it here first, folks. We've got a step and repeat that's fully branded.
Yeah.
You have a registered trademark with the U.S. Patent Office, which is incredible.
That's brand new.
And we were also warned to not have explosive laughter because of our pop filter. So anytime we laugh, we have to be conscious to back away.
I know.
I love it. This is cool. We're living in the future, Susan. Glad to be here.
You know what? I'm actually first of all, welcome back. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom, all your gems with us. And I actually want to point out, where you just started with this, because this is like the truth. Like, you don't know what you're doing, really. I mean, you plan as well as you can, and, you do the best that you can to get started, but it's not until you get into action that you start to see what works, right? You find the little thing that works and you run with that. You find the thing that doesn't, you get rid of that. And I think that is the message that we really want to expand on today, is how do you get to that place, right? Where does the ability to be comfortable in the imperfect world in which we live in become a reality? Because that's the truth. If either one of us were too embarrassed, or if we felt shame in any way, first of all, you would have never been in that chair. I would have never been in this chair. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't have even happened, but we wouldn't have enjoyed ourselves, and we wouldn't have had the, opportunity to make something even better. So I'm going to have you jump right into, because you're so good at this. How do you stay uncomfortable, or how do you stay comfortable even when things are unfamiliar?
That's a great question. And I love everything that you acknowledged leading up to it. Because when I think about how I started my career, I started as a professional sales rep. And I think what, at an introductory fundamental level, that got me comfortable with being uncomfortable was I was conditioned to plan your next call, plan your next interaction. And even though I had really good plans, I started to acknowledge I needed to have a contingency. I had to have a backup plan, because if plan A didn't happen, then Christian, you got to go back into your brain and you got to activate plan B, plan C, plan D. Who are you going to talk to today if you couldn't get to that key target customer? So I would say that's the first thing that gave me the confidence to be comfortable being uncomfortable, is that I was a planner and I was really activating that skill and implementing it every single day. I would say also, what really helped transform me with getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is developing resiliency and speaking up and putting myself out there. Very early in my career, I stretched myself beyond my functional capacity into conversations that people higher up than me were having to impact enterprise-wide initiatives. I'm talking inclusion, diversity, LGBTQ representation. So all of these things as a 21, 22-year-old that I was having exposure to really broadened my opportunity to say, hey, I have a perspective. I have a right to be here at this table. And I want to share with you what I'm thinking, because I know that it's going to impact way more than just me, myself, and I.
I know. Okay, so let's break a couple of these things down, because I'm going to tell you exact opposite. especially early in my career, I felt a lot of fear. I wasn't actually really comfortable with who I was or what I was doing or what I had to say. And I doubted myself a lot. And I found that when that was happening for me, I can talk about it now because I'm completely different. I didn't really know what was happening to me back then, right? But, with perspective and with expansion and, you can learn these things. What helped you to feel that confidence at such a young age?
I think it comes down to a couple of things, and we're going to get really real here.
Okay,
so
bring it.
When I was a child, I was born with a developmental disability. So I was born with class 4 bilateral club feet. It impacts about 1 in every 10,000 children. And it's a congenital disorder. So both of my feet were basically mangled and looked like hands from the moment that I was born.
Oh, wow.
My parents sacrificed a lot. I had 4 corrective surgeries before I was 2 years old. I had a speech pathologist because I didn't speak until I was 2.
Wow.
And then when I did speak, I had a lisp and a stutter. So rock on.
Man,
yeah.
You got the trifecta.
I got the trifecta.
Yeah.
So I really had to overcome that. And I think what was so powerful was in that moment, at such a young age, I saw what my parents were doing to create equity for me and also to unleash what gifts I did have. So they got me out front.
Yep.
I wasn't athletic, but what they did was they turned that the stage and theater into my sports arena.
Oh, wow.
So they really encouraged me. My mom worked with me night after night for my first...
I love your mom.
Yeah, me too. I love my mom and dad.
Mom.
They're the best parents. Yeah. They gave birth to this. How could they not be great? But yeah, I remember the very first play that I was in. It was called the Granny Awards. So it was all these different fairy tale characters getting ready to go for their Grammy Awards. But it was being presented by a granny because we were all 5 years old. So they had to make it. It was very
so cute.
My mom worked with me day and night. I was a master of ceremonies and I memorized every single line, had inflection in my voice. I was dynamic and the crowd ate it up. And after that moment, I went on to be the leading actor in all my elementary school plays.
Yep.
I wrote and produced plays in high school. I was, the song and dance theater kid. And I just loved the spotlight. I loved the stage and I loved connecting with people because we had an opportunity to tell a story.
Yep.
And I think once I got through college, although I let that side of my life I didn't really harness it while I was in college. I tapped into another side of my personality, which my parents also really encouraged, which was leadership and being an advocate for others, putting myself out front. I was a resident assistant in college. So I was working with 18-year-old freshmen on how to acclimate, how to navigate, teaching them the culture of St. Joseph's University so that they could really go on and thrive. And all of these experiences I share because I became really comfortable with putting myself out there, testing the limits, seeing what I could do. And the reception that I got encouraged me to keep going forward.
Okay.
Listen, when you mess up a line on stage, no one knows it but you.
Okay. Unless you show it.
Unless you show it.
Unless you show it.
Unless you show it. And I think, as long as you go into things with an open heart and open mind, you'd be really surprised the reception that you get on the other side.
I love it. Oh my goodness. So let's break down a couple of things that are happening. And, I think everyone appreciates you being so real and so vulnerable and talking about this, your personal experience, because I do think, I don't even think I know for a fact that very much of what we become as an adult is literally solidified in those first 6 years. That's really important to bring up. There's a lot of research around that. Google that birth to 7, birth to 6 is really when you are what research scientists like to call in a theta state. As adults, we're only there at night. That's going to become important in a later conversation. But as a young child, you pretty much live in that. And that's where you are most receptive to your environment and your surroundings, and you're being fueled by whatever in your family. You came from an amazing family experience, right? Of people that were motivating, right? They encouraged you. They showed you, how many things did you say, right? They showed you what was possible for you. They didn't enable you to sit with a woe is me attitude, right? They weren't that way. You weren't that way. That story could be completely different, right? We could talk to 100 other people in your same instance who have a completely different experience. I would be willing to believe it is because of those factors.
Absolutely.
Right? You came from a family with a great growth mindset. Whether they knew that term or not, your mom was a million years ahead of her time, and then the other thing that I want to point out that you brought up that is so powerful is there became an emotional connection around success for you. So because of all that work, and then when you were in the spotlight and it was a very positive reinforcement, you created a very positive cycle around being comfortable and having it feel safe, being seen and being heard. So it's easy for you in some way in your role because you have that foundation from the childhood. But I'm going to tell you something that's going to surprise you. I would tell you I have a complete opposite story around that. And I think this is why you and I have arrived in the same place. It just took me a little longer. And no disrespect to my parents, but in my family, and I feel like almost everybody listening can like go into their childhood right now and like literally be like, that was the moment. That was the moment that I propelled forward, or that was the moment that everything shut down for me. And so for me, the story is as a young girl, I was 12, my brother, and this is like so fitting to be telling this story because we just witnessed this in real life. My brother had a congenital heart disease that no one knew about. And unfortunately for him and for us, I was alone with him as a 12-year-old girl when that happened. Now, for me, seeing that story is so validating because, it took unbelievably trained people, right? An entire universe praying in that moment, right? It took all of these extenuating circumstances to help save this particular man's life. As a 12-year-old girl, I was certainly not equipped for any of those things. And, the upshot of all of that is I had a tremendous amount of guilt over, and my brother did not survive that night. So I know it's honestly, it's devastating. I can tell it from a very different place because I've done a lot of healing around it. But if you look at our two stories, right, in my emotionally charged moment, the worst happened, not the best. And I, in some way, shape, and form, and this is very true, like anyone listening, if you had an experience in your childhood, there is magical thinking is what scientists like to, or like therapists would refer to this. The child always finds a way to make it their fault. So I assumed a lot of responsibility that really wasn't mine to own, but I didn't have a way of like managing through that at the time. It was much later in life until I figured out how to do that. So for me, being safe, being visible, being seen were actually not very comfortable things at all. So it's so fun to see our two stories, kind of playing out in this way. And the truth is this, it doesn't matter whether you got that as a child or whether I found out how to get that as an adult. Don't say it can't be done. There's always a way, right?
It's also the inflection point too, and where you're most receptive to that learning. I think
that's a great point too.
You know what I mean? Like I think sometimes you arrive at learning when you're most receptive to it. And it has to be a mind, body, soul connection, I think, in some degree. Because truly, when you have that synergy and that alignment, that's when everything is really open and you have an expansive outlook. So your moment of clarity, your moment of learning really came probably, if I could hazard to say, when you had an opportunity to work through and do some of that healing work around your brother.
Honestly, I appreciate that perspective so much. It is true. It took that many years for me to really be in a safe space where I could actually explore those, explore those emotions on such a deeper level. And I think that for, this conversation is about talent management. I mean, here are two stories. You have no idea what someone is bringing to the table, right?
It's 1,000% true.
And what experiences have. But I think that we've proven as a manager, when you get really good at listening and keying into someone's emotion and putting yourself in their position and helping them to expand, you start to really see performance accelerate. What else do you, so again, we know that you're a phenomenal manager and you come with this great growth mindset.
Thank you.
We know this to be true, that as you expand your own personal mindset, your ability to expand those around you increases exponentially as well. So what do you think are some other reasons that you are so good at developing talent?
Well, I'm still quite new at this. I'm less than a year in role, and you really have to ask Jill and Isabel, who aren't on my Venmo, but they're my two. My team is made up of both of them, and they would have to, keep the record straight on how great I am of a manager. But what I think is working well is that I have shared a lot of the strategies that have served me well, transparently and in real time with both of them. I benefited over the past couple of years that I've been with my organization, even before that, doing a lot of reflection, self-leadership. And I had the opportunity to work on this with an executive coach. So through that, which was fabulous. But through and through that work, what I was able to glean was start with the end in mind. Where do you want to see yourself? Not just next year, 5 years, 10 years, your big, hairy, ambitious goal. Where do you want that to be? And what's your North Star that's going to propel you there? Because when you start there, Susan, you then reflect on all the different experiences that are going to get you there. It doesn't have to just be straight vertical in order to get to the next destination. I've got big, hairy, ambitious goals, but I know that I have to go sideways. I have to experience all different types of elements within my organization, within the industry at large, in order to really have a rewarding and successful career. So that's my first thing. Start with the end in mind. And I think as managers, sometimes managers only focus on the task at hand or your book of work, your remit in that present moment.
This is what we have to do right here today.
This is what we have to do right here today.
Yep.
But in order to create a following and get the most out of your people, really inspire them, you have to set an ambitious vision and you have to bring them on that journey for that vision. I also think too, working individually with people really helps you identify what their blind spots are. It allows you to co-create. I think that is so powerful because we don't have all the answers. And I think now, as we impart career wisdom or seek career advice, the game has totally changed. I think people would, in the past, even 5-7 years ago, they would recommend, you have to experience this and this and this before you get where you want to go. Now, everything has changed and it's changing rapidly. So you just have to go into, I think, these conversations with your people and share with them, be opportunistic.
Yep.
I'm going to support you no matter what. You're coming here to get skills, refinement, leadership. I'm going to help shape you to the best of my ability. You lead that conversation because I don't know everything that you need. So you need to entrust me with some of your knowledge and wisdom and your blind spots. And then when we truly connect, we could then identify opportunities that even both of us may not have arrived at with the original conversation.
I love that. And, I find that because you're so vulnerable, it is possible for you to say, I don't know the answer.
Exactly. Yeah. I never know the answer.
Yeah. And that's okay.
I don't mean to farm it out, but it's like when you work for a large...
No, that's the beautiful part of it. Yeah. You don't actually even have to.
When you work for a large company,
the person to ask.
You need to maximize your relationships. Yeah. I give recommendations and guidance, and I may share with my people and my team at large, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what I would recommend, but it's not gospel.
Yep.
It's not be all end all. So you have to have flexibility built into that and not be so rigid.
I know. And, I will tell you in my own journey of discovery, again, coming from this place where I had to create an environment that was safe for me to achieve. And that meant being that I was the smartest one in the room. So if there was an underlying feeling in me that I wasn't the smartest one in this room, it wasn't actually safe for me to say, I don't actually know the answer. And I can tell you jobs I lost, positions I didn't get, right? Friendships, like things that were completely derailed simply because I hadn't yet figured out how to say, I don't know that. So as a manager now, I get really good at understanding the subtleties of where somebody is struggling to do that. So for example, it's really easy if someone, kind of has a huge outburst, right? And then it's really easy then to have a conversation and be like, wow, that was really interesting. You want to talk about what just triggered that, right? Or the word I actually like to use is activated.
Yeah.
I know you and I both have had that conversation. I love, because anger is an activator, first of all. So we study energy scales and the human energy in the body. And if you ever wondered, why do I have to get so angry in order for me to say something to somebody? It's because energy is an activator. It's actually the first emotional response. Anything to do with fear, guilt, shame, a couple of other ones are very low-level energies. They don't prompt action. On this scale, anger is actually the first anger-producing energy.
Wow.
And if you come from sort of a depressed background, a depressed family, or experience like I did, where energy wasn't always readily available, sometimes I needed that anger as a fulcrum for action. So I've had a complete relationship, I guess, with anger. It's actually very powerful.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that
emotions in general, I think, are powerful. But what you're doing and what you're sharing, Susan, if I may,
please,
is you're seeking to understand. And that right there, that's a huge leadership principle that I gleaned through my own self-leadership journey. Seek to understand, remove assumptions, and even if you don't have all the answers or don't know the answer, it's okay to take a partner with you. You can always phone a friend. There's nothing wrong with that.
I just said that to my son today.
Yeah, phone a friend.
Phone a friend.
Figure it out. When I was going through the interview process for the current role that I have right now, it's my first formal time leading a team. And I sought advice from somebody who was already a director within my organization. And I asked her, I said, what's your approach? What's your outlook from a leadership perspective? And she was like, I trust my people, I empower them, and I don't give them enough ropes that they can hang themselves, but I give them the opportunity to call me, phone a friend. I'm here for you. Nothing is going to get you, nothing is really a career limiting move or is going to get you in hot water. I'm always going to have your back and I'll be there to help you out. And I thought that was so simple yet so profound because that human connection and just acknowledging that you have somebody's back is probably what people most often need to hear.
Correct.
But it doesn't get told to them enough.
Correct. And I would tell you, it's one thing to say I've got your back, but it's another thing when you've gone out on the ledge.
Yeah.
And you've tried something and, you've got a little egg on your face, right? It didn't quite go right.
Yeah.
Your manager in the moment shows their true colors.
Yeah.
So if they really are comfortable with the uncomfortable, they will defend you to the end.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then that's going to shine through for them and they're going to defend themselves.
Yes.
So I love the nuance of this conversation around expansion, because now you're seeing why some managers rise and some managers struggle. It really is the level in which you need to protect and defend your own self.
It's true. Yeah.
And right, you even though you're newer to management, you're already excelling and exceeding expectations because there's not a lot of things you need to defend from.
No, and I've also had the beauty of navigating 10 years and 16 different managers. So I've had
that's a lot.
I've had a lot of experiences.
Do you think that's normal? Is that
I think it's becoming normal.
Is that I've been out of typical work environments for a long time. Is that what's happening for people?
It's normal. It's my normal.
I don't
so
anybody
I'd imagine.
Watching this,
yeah.
How many managers have you had in the last 10 years?
Yeah,
I'd
write
love to know that answer.
Comment. Yeah. Subscribe, like.
That's something I want to know.
Yeah, I would too. I do think that it's above average because I've sought advice during that journey.
Okay.
Because you have to adapt and tailor and sort of reinvent yourself with each new manager or each new leader that you're working with. But what I have learned is that regardless of the situation or the experience, you learn something from everyone. And all of those experiences do find a way to create the leader that you are today, but also who you aspire to be. And you're also, if you come from an expansive growth mindset, you have the opportunity to really redefine what your leadership virtues are and the type of leader that you want to be down the road. I think the biggest thing for me from a leadership perspective has been those folks who've ignited a spark, nurtured growth, and developed a ripple effect. So by creating intellectual curiosity, creating that environment where we could all lean in and ask why, or what if, I wonder, what if we did something differently? That's a huge phrase on my team. And it's a subtle way of speaking up. I wonder, can we explore? What if we did something different? That's a great way to create psychological safety and a very foundational, basic strategy. I think...
and all of a sudden that becomes normal behavior.
Yeah.
Right? It's perfectly fine for us to say, I wonder if.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what else could we do? This is how you end up, with all these new things we have from one episode to the second episode. It starts to accelerate the performance. Like all of a sudden, the space in which you can take repeated action shortens, right? Or I guess I should say it the other way. When I was first learning how to be visible more on social media, it was excruciating for me.
Yeah.
Talk about for a person that already struggles a bit with being seen and heard, right? To show yourself in such a public forum was excruciating. So years ago, when I first started this, I would literally sometimes have to go to bed. I would do something live. It was so anxiety provoking to me. I would go. I would literally. I couldn't. Yes,
no more.
That was the best gift I could have ever given myself. But I want to tell you the craziest thing. You know what? Nobody cared.
No.
Nobody cared. There was
they cared
never...
if they wanted to learn, I'm sure, and if they wanted to connect and connect with you on a deeper level. Yeah.
Nobody was mean to was expecting all this. And as a matter of fact, I always say this, you'll be surprised how the ground rises up to meet you.
It's true. 1,000% true.
There were certainly people that I'm sure judged me in some way or had some comment. I'm sure, right? It's just the natural way of things. But the number of people that actually showed up to support me always shocked me.
Yeah.
Always shocked me.
And it's powerful. It's empowering. It's really nice. I think, too, just to go back and put a bow on it, but I also think, too, good leaders also nurture growth. So to your point earlier, so what happens if I say something, in a meeting and I may have some egg on my face, or I try something new, I speak up and maybe they don't agree with that decision and go in a completely different direction. That's okay, too.
Yep.
And it's okay to still encourage the behavior that's speaking up, being visible, sharing your voice, sharing your perspective, even if the decision is not in your favor. And that's a powerful lesson because it's not about always being right. It's about keeping the conversation going and having other people pressure test and poke holes and arrive at an even better conclusion as a result of that. So your behavior actually contributes, I think, tenfold to arriving at an even powerful conclusion.
This is where, when you start talking about high performance of teams, it's the withholding of information, that valuable information that you have, because it's not safe for you to share it, is actually contributing to the, I'm trying to find the opposite word for not high performance.
No, it's a low performing lack of trust, I would say too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think that you're protecting yourself or you're protecting other people. I have this conversation around the difference between kind and nice, because it's really hard for managers sometimes to be truly honest and say things that people need to hear. Yeah. And again, under the kind of the same conversation, they're almost always grateful.
Yeah.
When you tell somebody something they didn't know, they're always grateful. And if they're not, it's more of a reflection of their own internal self right now, and not really a question of what you said or how you said it. So you can kind of be easy there. But if you are not comfortable being truthful with people and needing to sort of make things nice all the time and let there not be conflict, right? You're robbing people of their opportunity to become the next version of themselves.
And to grow.
I mean,
exactly.
It's so important.
I think even when we think about sales training, people, talent development, things like that, you need to be a coach. You need to take on player coach. So sometimes you're going to be in the thick with them, acting as a player. You're going to be their comrade, helping them to really execute a project, bring something over the finish line, or just sharpen their craft. Other times you're going to be a coach. Hey, let's talk about your most recent experience with XYZ stakeholder. What could have gone differently as you communicated your next initiative, or you communicated your training plan, or you were trying to get that customer to say yes, even though they've told you yes before, but they really haven't pulled the trigger or tried something new. So I think it's that fluidity as people leaders of this era, where you have to be player coach all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I love it. So one of our goals for this session today was to have the conversation that we just had. Listen, we know that we're going to train to the do, right? And we're not just showing up with information, but the most impactful part of any training program, the most impactful part of any manager is really their ability to connect on emotional level with their people, to see them for who they are, right? To inspire where they need to inspire, to make it safe, to be a little adventurous, to be a little risky, to do things differently. Is there anything else that you want to add to that conversation before we venture on? Because there's one more thing you really need, all those training folks out there that are following us, in order to be truly successful in this performance arena. I just want to make sure that if there was anything else you wanted to add, that you got a chance to do that.
I would say it starts with self-leadership.
Yeah.
Know yourself.
Expand yourself.
Inside and out. Do the work. Take the time to do the work. And really clearly identify what it is that you want to achieve and how you're going to activate that in others. Because the deeper that you connect with yourself, the better off you're going to show up for the people you serve. Is
there a person that you admire that other people could go look at for advice? Is there
there are so many people that I admire.
Can you pick one?
I would say Carla Harris for sure. She's a mover and shaker in the financial industry.
Nice.
My first manager, who I mentioned in our first podcast, Dominic Petrone, he's a current sales leader at Novartis. Christina Santos, who's a head of inclusion and diversity at Capital Group. These are all of my gurus and people that I aspire to be because they're so great and just gifted with people.
And I love that I call them the board of directors. I literally have a board of directors that's in my head. And I love to fill it with people from different industries, people that have a different mindset, different skill sets from me. And, I use them to make those decisions. So listen, Christian, we're coming up to the end of our time together. You are always so inspiring. It's such a good conversation to have. I always feel like you send us off with your favorite mantra. Is there a mantra in your head right now for you personally?
Always a mantra. But I think now it starts off with being the leader that you want to be resides inside you.
Oh, let's say that again. The leader that you want to be
resides within you.
And it needs to break free.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Be a leader, be a force, be a catalyst.
Thank you so much. I think you're going to be back again.
Absolutely. Let's do it again. This was great.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.